I'm Tim O'Brien, and welcome to Homespun Tapes. This is a mandolin, and I'm going to show you some mandolin stuff and also some bouzouki stuff. First of all, play a little tune called Down in the Willow Garden. One of the things about this course that we'll go through today is I'm going to discuss the reasons why I choose the mandolin over the bouzouki on various tunes and for various situations. First of all, I'll just play this same song on the bouzouki. The bouzouki, of course, in its traditional form originated in Greece, and then it was adapted by Irish folk musicians, namely Andy Irvine and Donald Lundy, starting in the late 1960s. And it's starting to become popular here in the United States, playing traditional music and country music and for songwriters and that kind of thing. A lot of times Irish bouzouki players tune them a little differently than I do, but I tune mine just exactly an octave lower than the mandolin. So I have a G on the bottom, a D on the next string or the third string, and an A on the second strings, and an E on the top, first string. You can see that this is a lot bigger instrument than this one, but they're really tuned the same way, just an octave apart. The G on the octave mandolin sounds like this, whereas the G on the mandolin sounds like this. So you have the same notes. You have a G, a D, or a D. You have an A, and you have an A here, and you have an E here, and an E here. And if I had a couple more hands, I could play these both at once. Just as an aside, it's best not to tune to another bouzouki or octave mandolin because the word bouzouki comes from the Greek word meaning out of tune. So, just so you know. Anyway, one of the main differences that we'll go over right now is when you're playing the bouzouki is you need to use slightly different fingerings. When you're playing the mandolin, you can line your fingers up between the 2nd and the 7th frets, you know, kind of like that. But as you can see, that's a pretty big stretch on this instrument. So what I do is more of a guitar fingering where the index finger plays either the 1st or the 2nd fret, and the 2nd finger would play the 3rd fret if you need that fret. The 3rd finger or ring finger plays the 4th fret, and the little finger plays the 5th. So I tend to play in keys like G and D where I don't need to use that 6th fret very often, which saves me a lot. And to play in other keys besides those, I'll use the capo and move up and down, just like you would on a guitar. And that makes it easier because you use more open strings. Anyway, just to play, for instance, a G scale on the bouzouki. Open G, index finger here at the 2nd fret, 3rd finger here at the 4th, little finger at the 5th. Then repeat that same sequence on the next string. So you have that scale. The same scale, just an octave higher, start at that same note I ended on. Go go to the open A, index finger, second finger at C, fourth finger at D, open E, index at F sharp, and then you're at G again. If I'm going to go up into this, beyond the 5th fret, which is a little more challenging, you need to shift. Put your index finger at the 3rd fret. You may use index 3rd and 4th. Just sometimes I use regular mandolin fingerings on the bouzouki if I can stretch far enough. I had a bottle of burgundy wine. My true love, she did not know. It was there I murdered that dear little girl down on the banks below. So that tune basically is an old folk melody, and I'll just play the verse and chorus melody slowly for you. So like I said before, you tend to play your index on the 2nd fret and the little finger on the 5th and spread your other fingers in between those when you need them. Occasionally I'm sliding up when I need to up to the 7th fret to play that 7th fret on the A string with a unison on the E string. The chords are G. I use like a 2-finger G chord, index on the 2nd fret of the A string and 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. Down in the willow garden to an E minor there, just barring the middle 2 strings with the index at the 2nd fret, and then back to G and to E minor. C chord there. Now for that one, I'm again the same fingering you use for G, just move it over to the middle strings. And you can either bar with your 2nd finger on that 3rd fret, or you can use a 3rd finger there. So the last 2 chords are G, D to G. So you just have a 2-finger G chord. You can use it this way. but I like it from here to here, because then you just shift this finger down and add that one there. So the chords again are G, E minor, G, E minor, G, G, C, G, D, G. The second part goes to C, G, E minor, G, E minor, G, C, G to D to G. These bar chord forms where you use your index or your second finger to play the root and fifth of the chord you're playing, they are really helpful on this instrument. A lot of the mandolin fingerings that you know, if you play mandolin, sometimes are a little clumsy. They're a little too, the stretches are too wide. So you can usually find a major or minor chord by barring the root and fifth, starting at the, like in the case of this E minor chord, you've got a root and fifth here. And then for an E minor, you've got the minor third there. If it was E major, it would be just raise that finger up, raise that note up on the high string. For instance, I'm playing this G chord here, and I'm using this for a C chord. If I wanted to play another C chord, I might play this C chord here at the 5th fret. Index finger barring the bottom two pairs of strings at the 5th fret. That's C and G. And then your third finger there. I had a bottle of burgundy wine, like that. My true love, she did not know. It was there I murdered that dear little girl down on the banks below. Now, the other thing about the bouzouki or octave mandolin that's different than the mandolin is you tend to play it a little bit more like a guitar in that you can do sort of a root fifth thing with your right hand. You play the root of the G chord, strum, and then play the fifth, which is D. So down in the willow garden, and I hit the root of the E minor chord, root and fifth, or you can play the lower fifth. By adding that B note down there. Anyway, so I tend to play it a little bit more like a guitar, and you can sort of see that throughout the course today. So anyway, down the willow garden, that's how that one goes. Now, I want to show you how it would go on the mandolin, just so you know. I've got the mandolin. I'm going to play the same thing, but I'm going to use different fingerings. Instead of using my 4th finger at that 5th fret, I'll use my 3rd finger there. And a G scale would be open, index, 2nd, 3rd. Same thing. Open A, index, 2nd, 3rd, open, index, 2nd. So, just to give you an idea of the difference in techniques, I thought I'd show you that tune. And one of the things that I want to cover is that with the bouzouki and the mandolin, I kind of choose also not only based on the way they sound, but also in the way they sound in relation to other instruments. If I'm playing in a band, a lot of times the mandolin is more useful because it's certainly more useful for melody playing and soloing. It is a little bit louder, or it has a higher pitched presence which cuts through a bigger band. Certainly in a bluegrass band, the bouzouki would be kind of redundant. It has some of the same range as the banjo, and certainly a lot of the same range as the guitar. So the mandolin keeps you away from the guitar and banjo range. But in a solo setting, the bouzouki seems to work better for accompanying a vocal or a folk song. And it's also true that in a duet, a lot of times I use it with a guitar, or perhaps somebody else is playing a mandolin, and I might want to play the bouzouki to give a different voice to it. It's something you use, your best judgment on, but it's a nice texture, and it's like the mandolin. It's like adding a new bag to your bag of tricks without having to go too far. I thought I'd play a tune called The High Road, and this is a tune I wrote myself, and it's actually on a new record by Brian Sutton called Bluegrass Guitar. At least it's new this year. I'll play the chords. So that tune actually has words to it, and on my recorded version, which is on Flying Fish Records, you can hear the words. I'll sing a verse. I do a little different format on it. Up on the high road, looking down, thinking of how you let me down, and deep in my heart I hear a sound, a song to carry me away. We would come here years ago, and the stars would shine and the wind would blow. You'd look in my eyes and I would know you would carry me away. Late last week in the marketplace, I heard your voice and I saw your face, but you were gone without a trace. You sure did carry me away. So I'll play a tune and watch the stars. I hope the wind will carry it far, and if you hear me wherever you are, let it carry you away. Play old fiddle and carry me away to another life in another day. Here's a little tune I always play, it sure does carry me away. So that's the way I would sing the tune. I only play one B part every time, and play the A part in between the A and the B part when I'm singing, as I just did. Anyway, I'll play this instrumental section slowly for you. It's in E minor. 1, 2, 3. Now, first of all, I'll tell you about some of the chords. You've got an E minor, up on the high road, D, da, 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 to E minor, C, E minor, E minor, B7, E minor. So I'm using that bar chord E minor that we used on Down in the Willow Garden. Same D chord as before, E minor, C, E minor, B7, E minor. So that B7 is, so that's kind of a nice form. You can go to B7 like this, or like this. But what I like to do with the mandolin and bouzouki is use what they call horizontal kind of harmony. So in other words, instead of going sort of vertically down, I go sort of closer to something that's right by that chord I just played when I switch. So you've got an E minor chord here. Your index finger just slides down to D sharp. And the third finger, or second finger, slides down to F sharp. And that open A makes for a B7 chord. There's no actual B note in it, but all the other notes are there. Okay, so that's the first section for the chords. The second part, the B part, would go from E minor to F sharp to B to C to B to A minor to E minor to B7 to E minor. We'll do that again. E minor, F sharp to B, C to B to A minor to E minor, E minor to B7 to E minor. A lot of the time I'll use this form for F sharp. I'll go E minor and grab the bottom string at the 3rd fret, and I'm barring all 3 of the top strings, but fingering that A string at the 4th fret. It also is good from going from this E minor. You could go to that B to C, A minor, E minor, E minor, B7, E minor. So that tune has got some unusual chords for bluegrass, but I always like to find songs like that that have sort of interesting harmony. Before we go on to another song, I'd like to talk a little bit about left hand technique and right hand technique. I have a basic plan that I try to use on all the instruments I play. I also play the guitar and the fiddle. And with the left hand, I sort of explained earlier about the range of the fingerboard that you want to hold your hand over. For the mandolin, I try to keep my fingers in a line over the frets that they'd be used for. In the case of the mandolin, the 2nd 4th, 5th, or 6th, and 7th. So if you can sort of lay your fingers there and then pull them off the fingerboard and try to keep them in a line, you'll find that it's helpful because you're already there when you need them. The fingers are there, just poised above the fret that you need them, and the string. There's a tendency to go like this and have your fingers go off the fingerboard. And if you can keep them closer, you'll be you'll be easier on yourself, sort of economy of motion. In order to keep your fingers pointed in that line, it helps to lower the wrist down here, below the neck a little bit, and keep the thumb behind it like that. Kind of keep the thumb opposite the second finger, and keep a good space between the fingerboard and the neck and my fingers. That gives you that room and that stretch. It helps to stretch to those higher frets. Another thing, when you're playing on the E string, that wrist can come down a little more behind the fingerboard. But as you get to the lower strings, sometimes you need to reach. So just sort of pivot with your index and thumb around as you need to reach. So that you also, of course, the standard thing is to keep your knuckles bent at the first knuckle and sort of make a curve to the finger as it goes to the string. Because sometimes you have to bar and flatten them, but you really only want to touch the string that you want to play with your left hand. So that curve, and bending at both knuckles really helps. And try to come down at the fret as perpendicular as possible to the fingerboard. Sometimes it helps to stretch. Do little exercises like put your finger at the index finger at the second fret, and then the second finger at the third, and go back and forth like that. Then try it at the 4th fret. Try it at the 5th, and even at the 6th. You're never going to probably do that, but it does give you a leverage that helps in the long run. The same thing like index to 3rd finger. You can go from the 2nd to the 5th fret, 2nd to the 6th, 2nd to the 7th. And the real clincher is to get to that little finger. That's always hard to get there when you need it. So get used to that little finger hitting that 7th fret, sometimes the 8th as well. I think the hardest single stretch on the mandolin is between the second finger at the 3rd fret and the little finger at the 7th. So a lot of times to warm up, I'll go through these stretches. It's not very good music, but it's good physical exercise, and you don't want to do anything on any of these instruments too constantly to where you're in pain. I think one of the great things one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is to practice in short spurts several times a day if you can. Don't belabor any particular move too often, too constantly, because then you'll end up with some damage to your I think your nerves, and it'll get on your nerves too. So anyway, that's sort of my basic idea about left hand stuff. With the mandolin, one thing I want to say about the left hand is, if you want to learn how to play in higher positions, I think the first step is any tune that you learn where you use open strings, whenever possible, try to use the closed position instead of that, to learn how to play in all closed positions. So if you knew a tune like Soldier's Joy, instead of playing it with the open string, try playing all those open positions with a closed note like. And that'll really put you through your paces, and you'll find that you know, like if you know how to play stuff in D without any open strings, you can just take those licks that you learned in D and move them up to E. And to F, and so forth and so on. Any kind of traditional fiddle tune or a folk tune, if you learn the closed positions, you'll find you can move them into different keys just by moving up and down the fingerboard. So that's a good tip to sort of build up your technique. On the right hand, for one thing, I use a regular Fender-styled teardrop-shaped pick. This is the pattern they call clown barf. And I use the round end of it. The pointed end is the more normal end, but a lot of mandolin players and guitar players use the round end. So I cover about 2/3 of the pick, or maybe more, with the finger, with the index and thumb, and I kind of just basically put them perpendicular to one another with that pick in between. It's real important to me to be consistent with the tone, so I try to play at the same point between the fingerboard and the bridge top on each string. So if I'm playing here on the G string, I try to do the same thing on the other strings, same place. There's definitely different tones closer to the fingerboard and closer to the bridge. A real brittle tone there, sort of more high-endy, whereas a little mellower towards the fingerboard. If you play right over the fingerboard, sometimes you get the noise of hitting the fingerboard, so I try to avoid that. So I tend to play really kind of close to the end of the fingerboard, but not right over it. A lot of people that have F5 mandolins have this fingerboard extension down here, and they take the frets out and kind of hollow it out so they don't hit that fingerboard, because those high notes, there's really not much money up on those high notes where those frets are. Most of the money's down below the 7th fret. So you can play up high, but you don't want to hit that fingerboard. So what I'm saying is you don't really need those frets up there too much on the F5. Anyway, another thing about playing with the right hand, a good way to build up your technique with the right hand is practice playing a tune that you would play with alternate strokes. In other words, a lot of up and down strokes. Practice playing it with all down strokes. Like say that tune, the High Road. That makes your hand go faster, and it makes your right hand sort of independent of holding onto the bridge, because a lot of people will put their right hand down behind the bridge here and sort of brace there. And I certainly do that a good bit, but a lot of times I want to be free-handed for playing tremolo. And playing a lot of downstrokes and melodies playing downstrokes forces you to sort of be independent, I think. Another thing is there's all these sort of systems working together when you actually play a note with the right hand. You have the sort of arm moving, you have the wrist moving, you have the fingers kind of moving a little bit like this. At knuckles sort of bending back and forth. As it hits the string, say this finger is the string, as it hits the string, that knuckle bends a little bit back. And as it goes over the string and comes back up, it flattens out a little bit. So you have a little bit of that action going on. all those things are sort of like the tires and the shocks and the bearings and springs on your car working together to get the sound out on the mandolin. So just my suggestion is to work on an even tone from string to string. Try to keep consistent between, the consistent place on the length of the string somewhere, the place that sounds best for you. The idea of practicing with a metronome is you start out very slowly, and then you gradually speed it up, and you try to economize any motions with the left and right hand, and just sort of pare away the superfluous stuff and only do the essential stuff, and then gradually speed it up, and it makes it a lot smoother when you do speed it up. I know great classical musicians that play their music for a month before they ever start rehearsals. They play it very slowly and just internalize it before they ever start trying to play it at tempo. And I think that really helps. If you can get to where you're just sort of concentrating on one little thing at a time, I think you can accomplish it a little more easily. The tremolo is the idea of sort of making a sustained note with a plucked instrument, a plectral instrument, where you kind of go back and forth really quickly with the right hand. In order to get a smooth tremolo, I think it helps to just play some scales and divide each note into several strokes. Like, say, you might just do 2 strokes. Gradually speed that up. Now try it with 3 notes per stroke. So it's going to be down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So you can think of it as a triplet per note. So it's down, and each triplet starts with a alternating stroke. So you've got a down stroke starting it, up stroke, down, up, down, up, and back down the scale. I'll play it a little faster. So now try playing 4 strokes per note. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And it's important to use a metronome at some point in this kind of practice because you want to make those strokes even, the same length as possible. So now we got up to 4 strokes per note. Try 6. So it's sort of 2 triplets. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. So down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You can sort of think of it as 2 triplets per note. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So playing that all the way up the scale would be. And back down. The faster you play, the more you want to let that pick flop a little bit between your index and thumb. It'll sort of, you want to kind of hold it loosely so the pick will just kind of move and go back and forth instead of you working so hard to push it out of the way. Take a vocal song like this next one we're going to do, Lay Down You Weary Tune, an old Bob Dylan song. Vocal songs are great for playing a tremolo instrumental version. And this one is a good example. So that's sort of playing a tremolo version of that. Other tunes you'll hear played the same way by bluegrass players on the slower tunes and that kind of thing. And it's a good technique to know. This song is in the key of G. Lay down your weary tune, lay down that song you strum, and rest yourself 'neath the strength of strings no voice can hope to hum. Lay down your weary tune, lay down that song you strum, and rest yourself 'neath the strength of strings no voice can hope to hum. So I'm playing sort of a mandolin solo here that's more bouzouki style, and then I'm playing the melody on the higher strings, along with playing the accompanying chords on the bottom two. Lay down your G to C to G, G, E minor to D, D7, G, C, E minor, D, G. So when I hit that D to D7, I went to a G here, which is a bar form. You get the root and fifth barred at the fifth fret of that middle two pair, with the index playing the B note on the G string. And that's a nice, you're going from a D chord to a D7 to a G, and then to D. Lay down that song you strum, and rest yourself 'neath the strength of strings no voice can hope to hum. So that's the chords. But when you're playing the melody on the higher strings, I tend to shift up and down the fingerboard here. So I'm playing the melody playing it an octave higher. So you have these intervals of what is called a sixth. In other words, it's 6 notes between these 2 notes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes from that B note up to a G. So I'm going from a sort of a B and a G to a C and a A to a D and a B. Back down, and then I shift to the C chord. and then all the way up to an E and a C note. So there, see, I'm playing on all 4 strings. Mostly really the top 3. And I'm now on the bottom 3 because I'm playing the melody on the highest string that I'm plucking. So I guess my point is when you get when I get to that note in the melody, I only play the bottom 3 strings, so that way the top note of the 3 is the melody note, and it sort of rings through there. And of course, there's a lot of cross-picking or sort of arpeggiated stuff going on there. So the bottom 2 strings end up being part of that G chord, the G and D note. So you can sort of hit them at any time, and it works with this song. Okay, I want to shift to the bouzouki now and show you how it looks a little different on the bouzouki, and yet it's the same essentially. That's actually the tempo I would sing it at, but playing it more slowly. You can see I'm sliding up to that 3rd position thing there with the index at the 5th fret, 3rd finger, whereas on the mandolin I was using this finger for that 7th fret. I'm going to use the 3rd finger here. I'm switching to that C chord. That one slide, you're sliding from the index at the 3rd fret and the 3rd finger at the 5th fret to the 2nd finger at the 7th fret, 3rd finger, 8th fret. So then you're walking down from it's essentially the same thing as on the mandolin, it's just that you use slightly different fingerings, and it's much lower pitched. So, as my father would say, it's a distinction which is more apparent than real. Anyway, so that's Lay Down Your Weary Tune. Great song for the bouzouki. It actually is a Bob Dylan song that he wrote after an old Scottish hymn. There's other songs that go with that same melody you'll hear as you make your way through various folk music forms. I'm going to start using the capo now on the bouzouki. I'll put the capo on the 2nd fret, and one thing you want to do with capos, I like these shub capos because you can adjust the tension on them depending on where you are on the fingerboard. The farther up the fingerboard, the the more I loosen this tension screw because it gets tighter and tighter. So you get the right tension. It'll hold the strings down but won't pull them too far out of tune. So I'm going to play in G, making this song in the key of A, because with the capo on and playing in G, I'm in the key of A. In a room just like so many, knives and forks and glasses clattered, he sat behind a microphone in a corner where it didn't matter, for honest pay and honest player sang for tips and vacant stares on a nowhere night like any other, in a nowhere place where no one cares. She took a seat at an empty table, looked at the specials on the menu there. She'd been out of love for the longest time, and told her friends she didn't care. But from his list he picked a sad one, because his heart was empty too, and the song she heard was like an arrow from Cupid's bow. It fairly flew. One girl cried to a melody that turned around her soul. One girl cried, amazed at how the lyric took its toll. There beside a little table, she thought she was safe alone. But the music hit its mark when one girl cried. That song's got another verse and chorus. I won't go into it. But for playing that instrumental section and playing the chords, I'll sort of outline that. Again, I'm playing in a key of G. I'm using a lot of that open G and D to fill in the chord along with the melody. But the chords are G, D, E minor, B minor, C, G, C to D. And same thing, G to D, E minor, B minor, C to G, to C to D to G. And the chorus goes to C, back to G. One girl C, amazed at how the lyric, back to G. There beside a little table, that's B to C, and then to G, to C, to D, to G, and to the instrumental section. So, one of the things you'll notice is I'm going from G to D. I'm usually just playing one finger on the top string for that D, because that's all you really need. You got a D note, A note, and F sharp. If I wanted to, I could grab that low A note. But I'm going G to D to E minor, the one we've done before, to B minor. It's a B minor with a D on the bottom, so you have these top two strings barred at the second fret of the A and E string, and an open D. So it's kind of an unusual inversion of B minor. You have the third on the bottom. Another way to play B minor would be down here, or just these three notes, barring the bottom two strings. But it works with that E minor. You're going from G to D, E minor to B minor. If you want to continue that kind of voicing, you're going from E minor to B minor to C. It makes sense to go and have that sort of bass tone going E to D to C. So you've got an E note on the bottom of the E minor chord, a D note on the bottom of the B minor, and then a C note on that C chord. So I'm kind of using the third and fourth fingers on the bottom two pairs of strings at the fifth fret, or really the seventh, but the fifth fret if you're thinking about the without the capo on it. And then index on the third fret and open E. And you could, from there, go to a G like this, where you've got those two strings in the middle pairs at the fifth fret, and second finger on the fourth fret. So you've got this whole sequence. So again, it's da do 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 da do 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 Now when you play the instrumental version, I'm starting sort of in the third position. So I'm doing that slide down. And then changing to the D chord. I'm sort of using that second pair of notes that I started. So you're going back up to that third fret and fifth fret, fifth and seventh fret, along with the open D. So you've got, then to the E minor chord for the B minor. It's sort of a suspended sixth, I guess, against that B minor. And then C. So I'm letting that C chord ring and playing a passing tone there with the little finger. So the whole sequence slowly is. So that last little sequence is. I have a little hammer on. So I'm going to hit that note, hammer onto the second finger. One more time slowly. So that song, One Girl Cried, you can get it on a record called Rock in My Shoe on Sugar Hill Records, or you can find the lyrics on my website. You can go to timobrien.net. If you go to timobrien.com, there's a guy that sells real estate. You may want to remember then to go to timobrien.net. I don't know the guy that sells the real estate. Maybe he's good, I don't know. Okay, so One Girl Cried. That was in G, really in A, played in G, with the capo on the second fret. Here's another slow song. You're probably by now figuring out that bouzouki is really good for slow songs. I'm going to do a song called More Love. My friend Daryl Scott and I recorded this song, and also a fine young group called the Dixie Chicks recorded it, which is why I'm able to afford to play folk music still. Anyway, we're going to do this song in the key of D. I'm playing it in D, it's really in E, because I've got the capo on. So it's out of this position. A lot of times for a D chord, I'll use that particular form. Sometimes I'll play a D root up here with the third finger on the 7th fret of the G string. And bar the top 2 strings at the 5th fret. And it's really not a full, complete D chord because it doesn't have the F sharp note in it, but it does have D, A, and F, D, A, and D in it. So first I'll just play a little bit of the song. So that's a version of that song, and one of the things you'll notice is I'm playing a lot of chords up the neck. For this song, it kind of starts out with a pedal between G and D. So for the G chord, I'm using that bar chord form, either this, using the little finger for that high note, or the third one, an index on the 5th fret. And then just shift your index down to those top 2 strings, play the open D. So you're playing the low G note, and then the chord, and then the D string open for the D chord. So it's a G, D, G to D, G, D to A. Now, I think the first time I played the A chord, I used that form. So I'm using my third finger at the 7th fret of the D string for an A note, and the index at the 4th fret of the A string, and open E. And you can sort of do a sus, A sus, and back by hammering on. So I'm going G, D, G to D, G to D to A. And then I might go to the lower forms, G, D, G to D, G, D to A. Now that A chord, sometimes I'm playing an A chord like this with just these bottom 2 pairs fretted at the 2nd fret. Sometimes I'm playing it this way with all 3 of the pitches of an A chord in it, including that C sharp there. But what I just did the last time was I went, in other words, I've got an open A and E here with an A7th expressed by playing that 5th fret of the D string at a G note. And you're going to go back to a D chord from there, so you might use this one because it's close to that A7. So you're going G, D, G to D, G, D to A. Actually, at that point in the song, you go to a G again. So I'm going to hit More Love, G. And you can slide that up 2 frets to an A, to a D. So I'm barring the middle 2 strings for the G chord, sliding that up for an A chord, then shifting that whole form over to the bottom 2 strings, and adding the little finger at the 10th fret. 10th fret from the capo anyway, it's really the 12th for a full D chord. So more love, I can A to D, more love, G, A to G, G. Then it's F sharp minor to B minor. Same thing twice. And then B minor to E. But what I did, I think most of the times on this, I went from F sharp minor to B minor, F sharp minor to B minor. And that's a nice little sequence there. You're going from B minor and adding the little finger at the, I guess it's the 9th fret, I'm sorry, 7th fret from the capo anyway, 2, 4, 6, 7. So you start with this B minor and you add that to make a B minor 7. And then you switch to that, to the the third finger at the, whatever that fret is, 2, 4, 6. So you got 4, 6, and 5. And that makes for E7. So you've got a sort of a nice little sequence there. And then the next chords are G to A. So more love. So the chorus, more love, G to A to D to G to A to D, G, and then slide down a half step to F sharp, B minor, F sharp minor, B minor 7, E7, G, A. Now at the end of the first chorus, I just go into a regular D chord. And play it down there, just open strings and that index finger on the 2nd fret. Play some stuff around it, maybe in between there for a measure or two. There's ever an answer, it's more love. That little cross-picking thing is, oh love. Just sort of going down, up, down, 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 up, down, up, down, 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 up, down. More love. But the second chorus ends on a flow in between us and take us and hold us, and B minor 7 to E7. If there's ever an answer, G to A. I'm going into the solo, so G, D, G, D, G, D, A. So I'm playing open bottom 2 strings for G, along with that 5th fret and 7th fret. So back to that barred thing on the top 2 strings with the open D, sliding down to the index at the 2nd fret. So you got G, D, G, D, G, D. So I got A7 there with that 3rd finger at the G note. And then back to you heard me do a sort of a D chord at the beginning of this discussion. Up here, this is also an A chord. You can play that 7th fret of the D string at the what's an A note, along with open A and E. So I'm going So I'm doing that. You might want to use a little finger. It's kind of a stretch there. But that's essentially how to play those that solo. The first time through the solo, the first half of it, I went. But the second half, I went. Just sort of elaborating on the melody. So that about covers that song. So now you've got the capo. You use the capo in G and in D, and you're sort of practicing stuff where you're going using these bar chords and sliding them down and playing them on sort of different forms throughout the song. I want to talk a little bit about this instrument. This is a Giacomel. Octave mandolin. It's made by a guy named Corrado Giacomel, and it's spelled Giacomel, Giacomel, or chocolate milk, Giacomel. And Corrado lives in Genoa, Italy, and he makes these instruments. They're one of a kind. I mean, this is, I think, the very first one of these he made. And the scale, I think I told you before, the scale is about 20 inches from the nut up here to the bridge, which makes it relatively short for an octave mandolin or a bouzouki. I also have a nugget bouzouki, which is guitar-shaped, and you've probably seen me play that on stage if you've seen me over the years, and it's on a lot of recordings as well. That one has quite a bit longer scale. It has about 24 inches between the nut and the bridge. So definitely I have to compensate more using those alternate sort of guitar-style fingerings on that one more than I do on this one. While we're at that, I want to tell you a little bit about my mandolin. This is made by Nugget. Michael Chemnitzer is the maker's name. He has a nickname of Nugget. And this is a brand new instrument. It's the Tim O'Brien model, Nugget. It's a collaboration with Collings guitars and Collings mandolins. Collings cuts the tops. If I'm not mistaken, Collings cuts the tops with a machine down to pretty much the finished form, and then they send them to Michael Chemnitzer, who tap tunes them to sort of specific tones that he likes to get the sort of handmade tone out of them. And he ships them back to Collings. They assemble them and then ship them back to Nugget, and he inlays them and finishes them. And this is a Tim O'Brien model because my primary mandolin is a black-topped A-model mandolin like this. And one thing I really like about this is it has my name on the tension rod cover, so people know it's mine. But you can get one with my name on it too, from Collings. So anyway, this is my mandolin. This is my bouzouki. So I use this instrument on my newest record, which is called Traveler, and I played a lot of stuff on this instrument as well as on the Nugget mandolin. So the next piece I'd like to show you is an Irish fiddle tune called Kid on the Mountain, and you'll hear this on a lot of Irish recordings. Traditional fiddle players and accordion players and whatnot play this song. It's a jig. It's what's called a slip jig. There's various kinds of jigs: double jigs, single jigs, and slip jigs is a kind of jig that is in. This time signature is 9/8. So there's sort of 3 triplets per measure. So it's like 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a. And for jigs and playing triplets in jig time stuff in Irish music and fiddle tune kind of jigs, it's common to play each triplet as a down up down. In other words, you might, if you're playing triplets on a tune in 4/4 or playing other music, you might go down up down up down up down up down up down up for triplets. But for jigs, it seems to be good to go down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, because it seems to put those beats out there. It makes those prominent beats in the song more present. So this song starts with, well, first of all, I played it as we started the tape here, but I'll play the thing through one time. There's actually 5 parts to it. So there's 5 parts. Each part repeats. Each part's about 8 measures long, and you play that 8 measures once and then repeat it, then go on to the next part. In fiddle tunes, as some of you probably know, a lot of times you call the first part the A part, the second part is the B, and if there's other parts, they'd be like the C part, the D part, the E part. In this case, there's 5 parts, A, B, C, D, and E. It's all in E minor, though. And on the recording I made of this song for the record, The Crossing, I started it with this intro. I stated that the 3 beats, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, by doing that little riff. And what I'm doing is sort of a split string thing. I'm playing an open D and also a closed E at the same time on that pair of strings there on the 3rd pair, along with a B note on the A string. So, which sort of expresses a E minor 7 in a way. If I had fingernails, I would hook my fingernail around one of those strings, and that's like if you see Jesse McReynolds play split string stuff, or Andy Statman do split string stuff, they'll hook their fingernail around one string and they can make it a little cleaner, but I'm sort of cheating there. And then I start at 1, 2, 3, 1. So for each of these triplets, I go down, up, down, down, up, down, down. So it starts with so that's twice through the A part. So I'm going down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down. So actually it shouldn't be an up, that last note should be down, up, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down. The second part, So it's sort of starting at that B note. Then repeat. And you kind of notice that I'm sort of stopping the string to give a little rhythmic texture to it. I'm going to go through this third part, the C part. And a little slower. Remember, it's 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3. When you play jigs, you kind of want to go in a slip jig like that. You want to sort of express that timing. The next part. A little slower. And then the fifth part, or E part, I guess. And then you're back to the first part. Now I want to play this whole thing again with a little bit of ornaments, a little bit of triplets with the pick. So I'll just play through it once. So I've got a lot of little extra things in there. The first one I think I did was, I just did a da-da-da, da-da-da. And you can actually add an extra note in there. Same thing here. Instead of just going, I might go just that, but or the little ornament can either be one note up on the scale from the one you're ornamenting, or 2 notes up. Sometimes the one below, but more often the one above. So on the second part, I'm kind of ornamenting. So I'm going up to that 5th fret and back down. Just leave your index finger there and go up and down. And the third part, I do that as sort of I'm actually hammering on. It's sort of a hammer. So that's the third part again. Sort of anytime you have 2 melody notes, or like one sort of dotted quarter note that's, you know, a longer note. You could take that long note, you could make it a note and then the note below it and then that note again. Or you could make it that note, the note above it, and the note again. So if the melody is sort of, but you can play, or you can go. So these ornaments are kind of up to you. When you play it in an ensemble with other players, you want to sort of do the ornaments at the same time to keep it clean. But there's a nice book on this subject. Oak Publications has a version of O'Neill's Music of Ireland. It has this tune in it, just thousands of tunes, jigs and reels, and it explains the ornaments you can use. It's a beautiful song, and I'll just play a little bit of accompaniment for this on the mandolin. So that first part. That second part again is G, 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 D, G, D, G, D, G, 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 D, G, D. E minor is the third part. So again, it's essentially the same as the first part. The difference is it goes to a G and D at the end. D, E minor, G to D. So I'm going up to this G, to this D. So you have a G and D barred at the 5th fret. And then the root and 5th of the D chord are there with that index finger. So so it's the same part really again. Da da la da da la dee da 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 da. And then the last part, it goes back to G. Da 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 da. So you're going. A lot of times I go G to D to G. It's essentially the same as the second part of the tune, chord-wise. And a variation of this to this to this would be, so you're playing open G and D strings, and these two notes at top, and slide them down to the 3rd and 5th fret for a sort of D7 thing, so a C note and an A note along with open D. And then back to the original G. One more thing I want to talk about the first part. I played some sort of harmony notes along with the melody. All that is I'm just kind of barring these middle two strings at the E and D notes, E and B notes there, 2nd fret, and sort of playing. Sort of holding that whenever I can, sort of taking it, putting it on, taking it off. So one more time, real slow. Another thing is, there's another little ornament you can use. So I'm just kind of hammering on to the F sharp from the E. You can do that there too. So there's a lot of possibilities there in this Irish music, and it sort of never ends. But that's a nice tune. And the slip jigs are really fun because it makes you think in a different time signature than you used to. I want to play one more song, and the piece I want to go over is a song of my own called Traveler. And it's the title track to a record I just put out a little while ago. And I actually wrote this song on an instrument made by this guy before I got this instrument and before I met him and everything. I just borrowed it for a few days. I was playing a mandolin, but I ended up recording it on this instrument. First of all, I'll just play through it. It's in sort of 6/8. And this kind of 6/8 is kind of more like a like an R&B 6/8, like that kind of rhythm. It's a slower 6/8, not like an Irish jig. It's more like an R&B, or I don't know what it is. It's one of my tunes. A 1 and 2 and a 2 and a 2. only more questions from this world that he made. South of the city, where the olive trees grow, in the space between moments, my heart sometimes goes. I bathe in the silence, there down on my knees, then it's gone, like a woman who dances to tease. There was no way I could hold you, my dear. I could only get closer with each passing year. Sometimes I'm inside you, sometimes we're apart, but there's always a place for you here in my heart. And if we survive, it will all just depend, for we are but travelers on a road without end. There was no way I could hold you, my dear. I could only get closer with each passing year. Sometimes I'm inside you, sometimes we're apart, but there's always a place for you here in my heart. And if we survive, it will all just depend, for we are but travelers on a road without end. So what I'm doing on this is I'm sort of playing an arpeggio of each chord as I go through the vocal. And on the instrumental section, I'm using the arpeggio to articulate the chords along with the melody that I'm playing. First of all, I'll tell you what the chords are. It starts with A minor. And I'm usually playing that A minor with the index at the second fret of the bottom two strings. Then I'm playing an E, index finger at the first fret of the G string, and second and third fingers on the middle two strings. To a C, so open G with the index here at an E note and a C note here for a C chord. To a D chord. That's an F chord, and it's not a full F chord. It doesn't have the third in it, but it has the root and fifth. So I'm playing the second and third fingers on the middle two strings at the third fret and an index here. And back to an A minor. Sometimes just play those bottom two pairs with the open E and A strings. And then a B7 to a B chord. So I've got a index here at the first fret of the D string for a D sharp note, open A, F sharp here. And then I've got another variation of a B chord, index finger on the second fret of the top two strings with that. at the 4th fret to an E chord, and actually E7 in this case. So I've got second finger at the 6th fret for a G sharp note, index finger at the 5th fret of the A string for a D note, and an open E. So I'm going from just kind of playing some of the melody through there. And then I'm starting back again to A minor, to E, to C, to D, F, A minor, to B, E, to A minor. Now that A minor, I'm all the way up to the 7th fret with my index finger, middle 2 strings, and then the 3rd of the chord is played with the 2nd finger there. So that takes you all the way through the first 2 A sections of the tune. The bridge goes to a D minor, so I'm just playing open D and A with an index finger here at F. To an A, to a B. I use this chord every once in a while on the bouzouki, but it's kind of, this might be better. It looks like that E chord I played a while ago, but it's here, so it makes it a B chord. The root's right there, that's B. To E, and that's index barring the middle 2 strings at the 2nd fret, and the 4th finger playing that G sharp note on the 4th fret of the E string. Let's see. D minor, there was no way I could hold you, A minor. I could only, that's B7 to E. Then you're back to A minor. I'm not sure if I played this E chord yet, but yeah, I talked about it a second ago. But yeah, you've got the 2nd and 3rd fingers at the middle 2 strings, 2nd fret, and that G sharp note on the bottom. C to D to F to A minor. That's convenient too, because the melody right there, there was no way I could hold you, my dear. I could only get closer from me, passing you. Goes right with the melody, in other words. If you play A minor that way, it looks sort of like a C chord on the mandolin with that open A note in it. It's kind of a weird C chord and it doesn't always work, but in this case it does because it sort of goes with the melody. And then from there you go to B7 to E to A minor. So that's all the way through that tune with the chords. Now, with the melody playing, it's a little more involved. So I'm not always playing an arpeggio, but generally I'm trying to play the 3 notes of a chord along with the melody note somehow, adjacent to it in an arpeggio. So that's kind of the way through the A part. After that point, I'll do 2 A parts instrumentally, then I sing the A part and the B part, and then I play the B part and sing the last part of the B part. Anyway, you've got this chord, A minor, and you're kind of playing the melody around that as you shift to an E chord. And then you're to the C chord. So you're at a D chord there. So going to that F chord. You're kind of playing the melody around that F chord. When I don't need that, when I'm not playing, well, I guess I need to shift that index finger over there for a second. But as soon as I'm done with it, I go back to that high F note. And then I'm playing an A minor chord simply by fretting that E note. So that's down to that A minor chord thing. So let's go over that part from B7. So I got to go out of position there. I'm kind of holding this B7 chord and going up the scale and shifting. So I'm sort of in a half position there. Shift up and grab that B chord to this E7. Again, shifting out of position to catch those melody notes. That same sequence again. And then you're back to sort of the start again. Let's see, at the end it's a little different. So you go from the B7. You're sort of going to an E chord. But I don't really hold this all together. I'm sort of expressing that E chord, G, sharp, B, and E. But sort of cheating on it a little bit. Well, thanks for listening and watching this video. I hope I gave you some new ideas on using the mandolin or the bouzouki or both to play the kind of music that you like to play. Watch for me out on those highways and byways because I'll be out playing probably in your area soon. So I'm going to go out with a traditional tune called Cotton Eye Joe. Cotton Eye Joe. Had it not have been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. Where did he come from? Where did he go? Where did he come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Had it not have been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. Used to have a gal that down below, used to go to see her, but I don't know more. Had not have been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. Where did he come from? Where did he go? Where did he come from? Cotton Eye Joe. Had not have been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. Stubbed my toe, started me thinking about Cotton Eye Joe. Sat by the river, watched it flow, thought about